Welcome in to the Football Guys Dynasty Show. Thank you for joining us. We have our OG captain, Jeff Bell, and then we're bringing on one of our staffers, the beloved Corey Spala. He is our tight end expert, and we're kind of used to be like a data bro, and we've kind of converted you a little bit. We've tainted your soul a little bit. I love it. Thank you for joining us. We are talking about crowded and ambiguous backfields, the doo-doo situations, the running back dead zones, and how to navigate them. Are they all bad? Are they all doo-doo? And where can you buy them? We're going to start with Arizona. I don't think this is so much ambiguous or crowded, but managing people's expectations, mainly mine, because I love some Trey Benson. But James Conner is still there. He was still efficient last season. And I do think there is a place for him on this team. We know what he is as a player. The NFL knows what he is as a player. So, Jeff, we'll start with you. You are a Leo DiCaprio like me, also a running back hater. Is James Conner someone that you want to keep on your roster? Do you think he's worth even trading at this point? Because for me personally, I don't think he's worth trading. Because you're not going to get his value back, but maybe he's worth buying if you're desperate. Let the viewers know your thoughts on the old trusty dusty James Conner.
I think in Dynasty, there are really two running back sell windows, and it's August redraft season, and it's January right after you saw somebody turn in a top 12 running back season. Those are the two biggest sell windows in my mind. Short of, playoff stretch, sure, you can do moves there. If you had Conner and you were able to move him in that January stretch, what I'd love to do is go find a team that just lost in the championship game and maybe they struggled at running back too. And then, hey, here's James Conner. Your pick in 2026 will probably be way low because you're going to be the champion. And let me give that pick and we'll go with that. But now, I mean, yeah, you're stuck in dynasty land with him playing with Trey Benson for the rest of his career ostensibly. And so that makes him, you're exactly right. You're riding it out this year. You're hoping that you continue to get high-end running back production this year. Unless you drafted Benson too, then you probably want to get out of the mystery box.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I don't have a problem with Conner. And old players that are done. I don't care if you buy them appropriately to win and you need them, but that's you're desperate later in the season. Where I have a hard time with James Conner is his startup price. It's where I've seen him gone, I can't even tell you where he's at right now because he's too high to be blinders. And everyone keeps saying, and I've seen, fantasy Twitter, but it's James Conner. We always do this, but it's this old player that is well past their age cliff. And that's where I have an issue. It's just I could never draft him in a startup at his current price, even when he falls. Trading's a little bit different. I won't hang on Trey Benson because you've seen the show long enough. We love him. But Corey, we'll finish with you on your thoughts of James Conner. Are you one of the famed James Conner truthers out there that still believe in him despite the writing on the wall?
Yeah, I mean, looking at this 2024 season, he's veteran running back. He handles a large workload when he's healthy, yet he just has not finished an entire season healthy. I think a low of 10 games and a high of 15 games so far in his career. He gets the workload, but he just isn't healthy. So that's why they drafted Trey Benson here in Conner's last contract year with Arizona. Obviously, presumably Benson to take over in 2025. Even with Conner healthy, let's just assume he plays a whole 17 games. Arizona, they still have provided their depth with bunch of opportunity with 131 carries and 51 targets in 2023.
Yeah.
Hey, Corey, yeah. I know you've done a lot of really good work on running back and player production windows or prime windows, and you wrote some really good articles about that in the past. Is Conner outside of your production window for a running back, or is he scraping the edge, or how's he kind of sitting there?
Is he he's 28 turning 29, is that correct? So if that is correct, when I looked at what you are talking about, it was actually looking at what we would presume is an elite type running back. So Christian McCaffrey, maybe a Saquon Barkley. Is Conner somewhat of that elite status? If you do believe so, then he could easily play through his age 29 season. The only variables that came out when I was looking at these types of what we would consider elite, I don't want to throw that word around, but I looked at elite running backs, is essentially the player health. There was knee injuries, there was just accumulation of shoulder injuries, ankle injuries that derailed these guys' careers. Only a couple of them went out on their own where they claimed, I'm retiring. But you can safely bet, essentially, for a quick synopsis here, that a running back can play through their age 29 season comfortably, so long as they fit a couple variables to make that happen.
Yeah, that's so like I said, you could probably buy him and just know what you're getting. You're getting a 1-year rental, and whatever you're paying, just you're lighting it on fire to win. Just know that you are doing that. And I don't think, like I said, like negative EV moves, but like it just depends on price. Like we're about to talk about Dallas's backfield in a minute, but like that one, think about Ezekiel Elliott. He's so cheap now. Like, what are you really spending on Elliott to get, a little bit of production? And when I'm spoiling, it's time to move on. So with that being said, if you guys like this video, if you like my face, if you like Jeff's beautiful face, if you like Corey Spala, make sure to like, subscribe, and tell Corey how beautiful he is right there in the comments. And if you're listening on the audio side, please just leave us a review. Tell us whatever you want. All what matters is those stars. And remember, guys, speaking of stars, the Star Spangled Banner, baby. It's the 4th of July coming up. So we are having a sale. So you can go over to footballguys.com/plans, and then you get 10% off your first order of Football Guys premium subscription. We have everything from Dynasty content by two guys who actually write, Corey and Jeff. Y'all know I don't. We have IDP coming up, best ball, basically anything for you degenerates. So go over to Football Guys today and tell them that we sent you. I don't know how you're going to do it, but it'll just make me look good to the boss. Also, if you are over on our redraft channel, make sure to go over to them and give them a review, and then you'll have a chance for the Scott Fish Bowl. Eventually, we'll give you a chance to get tickets as well. I am just lazy today and dropped the ball, but we'll get you on the next episode. With that being said, we will shove past that, and we are going to talk about Dallas. To call this ambiguous is almost like just too much. Jerry, what are you doing? Or whoever, Mike McCarthy, just what are you doing? You have Rico Dowdle, Ezekiel Elliott, and I don't care. Deuce Vaughn. We'll just say Deuce Vaughn. I just don't think it's going to happen. Oh, man. Jeff, I don't know what to say. So, Jeff, I'm going to let you have this one. What are you doing with these guys?
Dowdle is the returning player, obviously. And when I really look at Tony Pollard last year, the way that Pollard struggled in what they wanted to be as a feature back role, they never went to Dowdle and kind of tried to make it a dual-headed backfield. And so that's my hesitation on Rico Dowdle, that they never tried to step back into having two backs to keep Tony Pollard fresher and to roll in that direction. So is he going to matter with Ezekiel Elliott? I got questions about that. I mean, I like Deuce Vaughn a little bit. I think that it's going to be maybe a little bit interesting. He could be the passing down work in this. And so that's where you could run into a situation where Ezekiel Elliott is the short yardage, the goal line back, maybe catches a little bit of passes because he can do that. Dowdle is maybe the change of pace that doesn't really matter a ton. And then Deuce Vaughn gets some passing down work. And then you've got, what do you got? You got a dreaded three-headed backfield.
Yeah, Ezekiel Elliott is the only thing that I want, and it's for touchdowns. Like he's the only one I could kind of see in the red zone, and I know what that is. But like you said, Rico Dowdle had every chance to be somebody last year, like in one of the best offenses in the NFL. I don't care about the Dallas haters and what they are in the playoffs. They give you fantasy points. Let's just say what it is. At the end of the day, they help you win, even if they don't help their fans. Corey, where are you at with this? Do you even want Rico Dowdle? Do you want Ezekiel Elliott? If you could get anything for Rico Dowdle, I would do it. Ezekiel Elliott, like I said, he's a very, very poor James Conner.
Yeah, I mean, looking at these three, Elliott, Dowdle, and Vaughn, head coach, Mike McCarthy, he noted that they may have 2 or 3 backs utilized in this committee. And he specifically noted that the players, these running backs, will determine if it's 2 or 3. Likewise, offensive coordinator Brian Schottenheimer, he feels very comfortable and confident it will work out really well. And those are words that he said. Obviously, Elliott, he's familiar with the organization. He provides that reliable depth. Dowdle, in those 16 games played last year, 89 carries, 22 targets. But looking at McCarthy, he also noted Dowdle, he's a leader in the room, which I don't know how that makes sense given there's only 3 of them. It seems like that this long-term running back, it awaits for them coming at 2025. But for now, this rotational committee, it's going to be in place for the season. I guess spike weeks galore, it's going to be present, and we're only going to hope for that running back is on your team, which will claim that high volume role, which, like you noted, is going to be those goal line touches.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the only thing you can really count on. Go ahead, Jeff.
So hot take here, Alvin Kamara, Dallas Cowboy by Halloween. And then the other thing, the way to approach these is grab one, at least grab one of them, and it could break in your direction. And don't worry. I don't worry too much going into it. Yeah, Elliott's there. I agree with you on touchdowns. But if you've got one, you've got a shot at having the one.
Yeah.
Good point. Deuce Vaughn costs nothing. Like, I don't even know. Like, he costs nothing. So, like, if you got a deep bench, if you got a generous commish that leaves you like 6 taxi spots, drop one of those tight ends that are never going to happen and throw Deuce Vaughn in there, and like I said, like Ezekiel, you know what he is, but like for long-term fantasy value, you might have something in Rico Dowdle and Deuce Vaughn. I believe in him less than anything, but I don't know. It's just hard for me to see. And I'm starting to change my tune because again, Dallas is a really good offense, and you like to have running backs that are in good offenses. So it's worth a shot. Like I hate when I get on these pods with you, Jeff, because I think I'm like a tree, like nothing's going to move me. And then I'm like, wow, you're making some valid points. With that being said, we will move on to, we're staying in the same division and another, you want to talk about a doo-doo backfield. It's the New York Giants. They have Devin Singletary and Tyrone Tracy. We know what Devin Singletary is. We saw the highest evolution of Devin Singletary in the Texans. And then you have Tyrone Tracy. Is there a second running back dead zone? There's like the dead zone, and then there's like purgatory, and then there's like hell. I think Devin Singletary is in purgatory, and you don't want him either because we saw the highest version of Devin Singletary in one of the best offenses in the NFL that is designed for running backs. Unless you're like basically Dameon Pierce, you can do like really great in the outside zone scheme, that Bobby Slowick had. So I think for the most part, if you can get anything out of Devin Singletary, now's the time. Like Jeff says, play Dynasty. Don't do negative EV moves. The real interesting one, Jeff, is Tyrone Tracy. I've slandered Tyrone Tracy right here on the show, but I've bought a little bit of the camp hype because I don't like tweeners because they aren't very good at anything. But the fact that he's learning the offense and this is such devoid in talent, again, he costs nothing. And a lot of times he might be on your waiver wires. I'm picking him up. Are you in the same ballpark? I know you scouted him. What do you think of him as a player?
The explosion stands out and the receiving ability stands out. And so you've got those two different things, and he's got the ability to create splash plays. I give him a little bit of a pass for not having prior production because he was at Iowa and nobody had production in an Iowa offense other than the punter. So yeah, I don't blame him there. And then he did have a little bit of a breakout year with Purdue. Devin Singletary is circling back there. Devin Singletary is going to finish as running back 20, and he's going to be the patient zero for points per game argument relative to total finish argument, because you're going to have the points per game truthers, which I am one of, that are going to say, well, you never wanted to put that dude in your lineup and he gave you 11 points every week. And then you're going to have the total points people arguing, well, he was a running back too, and that was a good pick and a good player to have on your team. And I think that's the way Devin Singletary is going to shake out in the wash. But Tracy, you're exactly right. You've got a back that has the receiving ability. You've got some ambiguity, and I would be we've seen Devin Singletary with Brian Dable before, and Brian Dable was hesitant to make him the flat out lead back, even when in a situation when Zach Moss was struggling in that backfield. They didn't really have a third option that they loved to go to. So that's where I think that it's in play for Tracy. And we're talking about acquisition price. All of this entire show is just acquisition price. And if you're able to get him for free in your league or low in your league, take a shot, because the backfields are a funny thing. And as long as it's one of those things that as long as you brought your shoes, you have a potential to dance.
Well, Jeff, we have some that aren't just acquisition price. So, because I made the sheet. Corey, where are you at on Tyrone Tracy? And like, actually, before I'll get to you, I don't mean to interrupt you. Jeff, you're 100. I love that you said that Devin Singletary, like the points per game argument. Guys, if you come in our comments and say so and so finished as the X, I will argue with you in these comments. I will. I've done it, and it's about Cole Kmet, but we won't go on that. Corey, back to you. Tyrone Tracy.
Yeah. We love rookies. I mean, 5th round rookie, he's 24 years old, but I mean, if you could get 2-3 years out of him, who cares? He possesses that athleticism, like Jeff said. He 4.48 40, 4.06 20-yard shuttle. I've seen some Eric Gray hype on Twitter. I don't know if that's just because where we're at in the offseason, people looking for something. I mean, looking at the New York Giants team as a whole, the offense doesn't look that good. Defense looks pretty good, solid. But the offense for fantasy purpose, I'm not that intrigued. That offensive line just doesn't appear ready to support that fantasy scoring. Saquon Barkley didn't do well here and there. But if Tracy is able to get that pass catching, those PPR points, then things are looking pretty good, especially if he can claim that lead role over Devin Singletary.
Yeah, you nailed it. And one thing that I will say about Tyrone Tracy is like he's probably on a lot of your waiver wires in like your standard league. Go get him. But if he's not, this is another one. I'm saying go make another trade with the guy and try to get Tyrone Tracy that way. You want to talk about the ultimate throw-in piece? That's Tyrone Tracy. And like I would be active to try to get him too, because this is like I think like what Corey said, in 2 to 3 years, that's a bit much considering the running back talent we get in. But this is another Dameon Pierce scenario. If you have that pop game. And another thing that we're not talking about is Daniel Jones is he loves that line of scrimmage, baby, meaning that ball is barely going to get 5 yards past it. And that's like great for like a player like Malik Neighbors, who has like a lot of yak and stuff like that. That's a good fit for him, but it's really great for these running backs. We saw how he used Saquon Barkley. Eli did as well. And I don't think Dayball's offense is really tailored to that, but the way that they've managed that personnel, I hope that he's a little bit smarter than that. And with that being said, Jeff, we are going to go to a less ambiguous backfield, and we are going to talk about Seattle. This is one that's interesting to me because I'm curious if any of you could get me to draft Kenneth Walker. And what do we think about Zach Charbonnet? Is he an AJ Dillon 2 electric boogaloo? We've got a new regime in, and we don't really know what that's going to look like. Or if they're going to do the same thing in college. But Kenneth Walker is officially someone I think is kind of the start of the running back dead zone. And it's not that I don't like Kenneth Walker. Just like if I'm in a startup draft, I would rather have the wide receivers there before they dry up, before I get Kenneth Walker, unless I somehow get lucky, especially in super flex. We'll change it up. Corey, we'll start with you. Do you still like Kenneth Walker?
Well, if we're talking about acquisition price, jokes aside, Kenneth Walker, great. He's played 15 games each season so far through his 2 seasons. I think he had 9 touchdowns each season, totaling 18 so far, because that's math. Zach Charbonnet, he had 148 opportunities as a rookie. That's a great for your RB2. There was a lot of hype that Charbonnet would take over Walker, and maybe that hype surrounding this second round NFL draft selection, it caused a perceived letdown, rookie season. Looking at Walker, I think 447 carries through these 2 seasons and 72 targets, which I think was 56 receptions, if I was correct. Looking at Walker, I like the immediate production that he can have. This offense seems to want to incorporate 2 running backs. I think and would figure that Walker is going to have another 200 carry season. if Charbonnet did develop, I figures that he's going to have a nice complimentary season. He's still going to see over 100 carries with that additional receiving usage.
Yeah, that makes sense, and I don't know what the cost to trade for Kenneth Walker is, but I don't want to Tony Pollard myself again. But it's intriguing that this is a win now move that I might consider. I'm not saying I would do it, but I would at least look at the roster on Sleeper and look if I could build some type of trade that won't make me feel disgusted with myself. I might do that for Kenneth Walker there. Jeff, where are you with Walker? Is he still too much? I know you're probably like me. Like I like Charbonnet, and I think Charbonnet is going to be there, and they could trust him to be the guy. And Kenneth Walker's got a contract year coming up. Does that scare you at all? Or are we just rich in that he's the acquisition price is too damn high? Oops, sorry, Joe, too dang high, and we need to get somewhere else.
I think that this is going to be really interesting because you're going to have a little bit of a push-pull where you've got a defensive head coach in Mike McDonald coming out of Baltimore, where they used multiple headed backfield last year throughout the season. Then you've got Ryan Grubb coming in from University of Washington, and basically Dylan Johnson was out there in the college football playoff, everything short of an amputated foot, continuing to play and continuing to be that lead back for the Washington Huskies. And so I don't know which direction it's going to go, because I think that there is the potential where Walker runs away with the job. I mean, Charbonnet could still run away with the job. So that's a lot of uncertainty to buy the high end of it. The other thing, too, that you're dealing with Kenneth Walker is you talk about in the startup market, I think is one thing. And if you're in our listener league where you're grabbing young wide receivers until they're gone before you're grabbing running back, then Ken Walker started to look pretty appetizing in that ADP. But when you're dealing with the trade market, I think a lot of what you run into with Kenneth Walker is somebody that says, well, I used a 106 on him 2 years ago, and he was an elite player 2 years ago, and he's got this high upside, and he's a key cornerstone piece of my dynasty team. And so I think that he's really one of those players that has, if it's a legacy trade market, and especially if you're not in a hyperactive league, has a different valuation than in a startup right now.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense too. And we think about that with Kyren Williams, players like that people get emotionally attached to, and especially with Walker, you actually spent draft capital on, both in startups and in a rookie draft. So you're going to have a lot of that bias baked into the price. And moreover, like the spreadsheet bros love Walker because his advanced analytics, and he's kind of an explosive player. You hope if he does, you want him to like work out in Seattle, but if he doesn't, you want him to go to like he would make a lot of sense as a Houston Texan, depending on how long they got Mixon for or something. So like to me, he's a risk it for the biscuit player, and I would kind of go against mine that right now, depending if the price is right, maybe go out, but like don't overspend them. So I'll ask the dreaded question: you didn't like spending a first on, let's say like Josh Jacobs. Well, with the younger Kenneth Walker, would you spend a first on him if it was like a low one and you had a spare? And I know you say you don't have spares, but I like to create a scenario where maybe you'd want to spend one.
I think I would rather have Josh Jacobs than Kenneth Walker, to be honest with you. And maybe that's blasphemy, but I just think that there's a higher upside potentially. I feel like there's more certainty around Jacobs in the Packers offense than I feel certainty around Kenneth Walker in the Seahawks offense.
Yeah. And the Zach Charbonnet is really cheap. So in startups, I've taken him a couple of times. I'll still buy Charbonnet. I like the price. And I again, he's only in his second year and it's a new team. And I think he's an efficient player. He's not like explosive, and he doesn't make the spreadsheet jockeys go ooh woo. But he's someone I could see an NFL role with long term. Now we will move over to Tampa Bay. And to be honest, I think this backfield is less ambiguous than people would like to think. Rachaad White is someone I have in a couple of leagues. And I have bought him for basically second round picks last year, essentially. I still think he's a little overpriced in a startup. I don't know if he's worth buying, but I don't think he's a hold. I do think people are a little too high on Bucky Irving. So, Corey, where are you at with Tampa Bay? Do you like Rachaad White? It's weird. They're like opposite players. Rachaad White is a better receiver and more explosive, but Bucky Irving's a better runner, kind of. But he's like slow and small. It makes no sense. It's like, it
Right.
makes
Yeah.
no sense. So what do you think here?
Yeah.
Do
Yeah.
you
I
like
mean,
Bucky Irving? Do you like Rachaad?
acquisition cost. If you play in a PPR league, I think, it's wheels up for White to retain this kind of large workload. He had 70 targets, 64 receptions just last year. Like you kind of noted there with Irving and White, they're kind of like opposites, but also like opposites, like with their like even like body frames too. Like Bucky, he will gain some carries over White, especially on the interior right there. But, looking at White, he played all 17 games. He led all running backs with 451 receiving routes. Obviously, the productivity in that passing game is very notable. Tampa Bay, selecting Irving there in the 4th round, it helps bolster their depth, behind White. And, maybe he provides that unique edge, like I noted, to get some interior runs there. But I'm kind of all wheels up here for White having a larger workload than what people believe Irving would take away from him.
Yeah. And I'd go even further that Irving's rookie draft cost was too much. Like in a couple of leagues with guys that are sharp, he fell to the 4th round. I'm like, okay, I'll take a shot in the 4th round. But like I know that doesn't seem like much, but the 3rd round's too rich for me. There's like sometimes I can get Marshawn Lloyd in the 3rd round. Sometimes I can get like I've gotten Xavier Leggett at the 301. And I get that we loved him in college, but like I feel like Bucky Irvin's got a lot of Michael Carter in him. So Jeff, where are you at with Bucky Irving? Do you think he's worth the price, or even as cheap as he is, it's a little too risky to spend any real capital on?
We might have found a running back that I might be willing to buy because not Bucky Irving, but Rachaad White, because I think that it's interesting because I feel like from what I've seen, everybody that has Rachaad White wants to trade Rachaad White and nobody wants to buy Rachaad White right now,
Mhm.
which to me, if you've got a player that has delivered a top 5 season, nobody wants to buy him, then alarm bells start to go off in my head to say, maybe this is the time to buy, because that's just kind of the way that I like to play the dynasty market when it comes to the hot trending player. I don't want to pay that price, but when I have a good feeling that this person has gone to the other 10, 12 people in the league and tried to trade Rachaad White, and Rachaad White is still sitting on that roster, that's where I might inquire to say, hey, what might it take to grab this guy? Because I do think the path to be a top 5 running back is still very much there for White. Now, I dodged around your question on Bucky Irving, but I feel like I also answered your question on Bucky Irving. I think that they desperately wanted to have a complimentary back last year. They tried it with Sean Tucker. They ended up on Chase Edmonds. It just wasn't there. Irving is better than those players, but again, he's a complimentary back, and that's what they want out of him.
Yeah. Yeah. And complimentary as in like probably 38%, like market share of that backfield. It's weird. Like you're right. This is a weird, and I'm happy we talked about this backfield because the more expensive guy is better at cost than the cheaper guy.
Yeah.
And that's pretty odd. So we're all in alignment there, and I think I might go buy Rachaad White because if I can get it for a second, I think that's worth it if I'm competing. And you're only buying running backs if you're competing to begin with. So we'll move to another one. The Cleveland Browns. Oh man, Nick Chubb, guys. I feel like we got to let this one go. This is another one where people like, but it's Nick Chubb. Well, I saw his knee get destroyed multiple times. Like I like multiple times. And and we keep saying on the show, Father Time is undefeated. And Nick Chubb, as cheap as he is, I think, we say risk it for the biscuit. I think that biscuit is kind of duty. Um, Jeff, I know that he's cheap, but you traded me Jerome Ford for Quentin Johnson. I like Jerome Ford. I have a lot of Jerome Ford. I'm probably counting on Jerome Ford an alarming amount to be an RB2 for me. Was it Quentin Johnston? You just like the upside more and you could afford to sell Jerome Ford, or you just not like Jerome Ford?
I think it's more that on taking a chance on Quentin Johnston. On, I like what I'm hearing, where they're kind of maybe understand how he can play football versus what the previous coaching staff understood, and are trying to use him in areas that he's going to succeed in. Because, and I always like to, if I'm not entirely out of a player, I like to rewind a year and say Quentin Johnston was locked into that top 8 tier in your rookie drafts a year ago, and the idea that you could have traded Jerome Ford for him would have been utterly laughable. So I don't know that his rookie season was that bad, that I'm kind of not willing to just roll the dice and take a chance there. That being said, since we made that trade, I did my projections this year for the Browns, and I'm going to like Jerome Ford a whole lot more than I thought I was going to before doing those projections, because it's really there on the table. And then Corey is a good friend of mine, and Corey is in a chat, and so we've been doing the Football Guys listener dynasty leagues, and I'm sent a message to Corey in the group, and I was like, we're in the round 15 right now, and I've got the 15.9, and Nick Chubb is still available, guys. I don't know what I'm doing here. I don't know if I should take him or not, and ultimately, Jag, I didn't take him, so that tells you something.
Yeah, I can't take him. Corey, you're shaking your head. So like you're with us. So like this is another one where even though he is so cheap, don't do it, guys. Just don't. Like Jerome Ford, he's been a big buy for me. Are you on the Ford wagon? Are you built Ford tough?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he saw 14.9 touches as the starter. I think that was about 12.9 fantasy points per game. I mean, don't get me wrong. I look forward to seeing Nick Chubb get back on the field. I'm just not optimistic for any fantasy relevance. Ford, I think he's going to assume that similar workload. We've seen that history in Cleveland utilizing multiple backs. They signed Deontay Foreman to provide that much needed depth. Maybe he gets that, first couple games while Chubb gets healthy. Chubb maybe comes back, and then Ford leads it with then whoever it is, Foreman, Chubb, as that second fiddle.
Yeah, it makes sense. Out of all these players that we've talked about, whether it's audio or you're on the video, Jerome Ford and Lloyd are the two I would aggressively try to buy at cost. Like I've gotten Jerome Ford for a third, and
Wow.
even if you're like rebuilding and you have like assuming that you're smart and you've been acquiring picks ahead of him, go get Jerome Ford, because like he could probably turn him into a second real quick, or a first, or another player that's worth it. Love me some Ford. Now we're going to go to the Rams. I can't wait for you guys to hop in the comments to talk about Kyren Williams. To me, it's hard. We're going to talk about acquisition price. Kyren Williams is incredibly overpriced. You guys have heard me go on a tirade. If anything, I've had negative ads, it's election year, negative ads against Kyren Williams. And I think, Corey, you agreed. I know, Jeff, you do. With that being said, Blake Corum. Blake Corum makes the spreadsheet bros puke. He makes the film bros feel nothing, because he's just pretty good at everything, or okay at everything. But I like okay at everything. And he's one on the film. I saw an NFL player. This guy can be in the right spot. If he's in a gap scheme, he knows where to follow his blocker. If it's a zone scheme, he can be patient and find the hole. He's tough. He's playing off an injury. Is he going to blow the doors off of defense? No. But and that's probably why I like Zach Charbonnet. So, Jeff, where are you at on Blake Corum? Is he someone that you're high on? I love his price and startups. I haven't tried to buy him yet in Dynasty. Where are you at?
This is gonna be a detour here, but so I am a big zero RB believer, and I think there's a misconception when people hear zero RB that you just take a zero from your running back, and that's not what happens. But we're doing this whole episode, and everybody's sitting here saying, well, Jeff hates every single running back, but I do want to talk about the way that I want to target and go after running backs and build my backfield in Dynasty. I really look at kind of two paths, and first off is the tippy top of the draft. I've got a lot of teams that have Breece Hall, Bijan Robinson, that I fell into high rookie picks, or we did the startup the other day and I took Bijan Robinson in round 2 in that startup. I'll have those players at the top of my roster. Pretty much that whole middle is where I'm trying to probably move off there. because I'm trying to get players like Kyren Williams or Blake Corum is like the fancy version of that. I'm trying to grab the backups that I believe in, have the opportunity to shift the backfield. I mean, flashing back to the Cleveland Browns backfield, Deonta Foreman is the type of player that I like to grab in Dynasty, where you're going to be able to get some usable weeks because my teams are built around hopefully elite quarterback production, elite wide receiver production. And so just give me something there. Corum, I think when it comes to him versus Kyren Williams, it's interesting because Kyren Williams' skill set coming into the league was all about him being a passing back. But towards the end of last year, he wasn't really a passing back. They weren't really throwing him the ball. And so when you look at what they were using him for, Blake Corum probably is better at that. And that's where maybe Williams, we've seen him before as kind of the personal protector for Matt Stafford towards the very end of the 2022 season, before that breakout in 2023. That's where I think you might see a shift. The way that they've used Williams last year, if they're going to use Corum in the early down or run specific situations, there's a lot of upside here. And talking about just zero running back, we talk a little bit about how Dynasty turns into redraft when you get into the season. Blake Corum is the type of zero running back redraft to go out and target because, yeah, he could be a running back one.
Yeah, I've had to force myself on Underdog, those best balls. I'm like, okay, today we can't draft any Corum because his price is just like so good, and even in these startups, I am willing to trade up to go get Corum at cost. Like he's an incredible value. So like put this as another one as someone you should buy. And I get you guys love Kyren Williams, but like look at what he did last year. And to kind of piggyback off your point, Jeff, of like he lost that receiving production. They didn't need it. They had Puka and Cooper Kupp healthy again. And then, Tyler Higbee, sucks for fantasy, but for NFL, he's going to catch a couple, and we even saw them use was it like Demarcus Robinson for a little bit? They had other options in the passing game. So like you said, when you think of just a downhill runner, like, guys, give Sean McVay a credit. There's a reason why he was a wonderkin, is that he is incredibly good at scheming up players. He comes from the same thing as Kyle Shanahan. So when you think about if Kyren Williams was good, imagine what a better prospect could do. Corey, I'm assuming you're high as we are on Corum. Are you a hater? Do you think he's getting a little too overhyped? Because as soon as we get off this pod and hype him up and I make a clip over it, we're going to raise his price?
Yeah, I like Corum, obviously, because when you look at Kyren Williams, he's 2 seasons. He's only played 22 career games, 10 and 12. He had 82% running back snaps last season. That just doesn't seem sustainable. Like, I don't want to really think this is anti-Williams. Like, I think this could be good for Williams, at least for a year before Corum takes over that lead role. He's not going to be playing that 82% snaps. He's not going to be that 21.2 points per game we saw in 2023. Corum, he takes 40% of that work. Pretty good. Maybe he takes over, but I think Williams still has a good chance of, maybe being like a 13, 14, 15 point, type running back for this 2024 season. We looked at like the historically Los Angeles team. Todd Gurley had 256 carries in 2018. And then their backups, they saw about 113 carries too. So there's always going to be a role for someone. If they're playing, great. If Kyren misses some team, then Corum has the opportunity to go ahead and just take over.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So with that, like you're pretty positive. Like I don't say pretty, you're way more positive than I am on Kyren Williams. Would that make him a hold for you rather than a sell, or is he still a sell at
No.
cost?
Oh, acquisition. So it all depends. Like obviously, Corum, he could be the long-term answer at the position. Goes back, to if you just need that right now production. Jeff kind of noted, I'm going to use that second round later in the season to acquire someone. So I guess you're holding Kyren and then hoping Corum, explodes and is able to take over, especially if you have him.
Yeah. And with that being said, we'll talk about our last backfield. And this is one of my favorite backfields because this is a rare both of them for me, where I like both of them at price, and that is the Steelers backfield. Um, honestly, Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren are almost going back to back in startups. That's across the board. That's underdraft, or underdraft. That's underdog. They're pretty close, and like underdog, it's pretty easy right now in best ball to like just every draft just like pick which one you want. I guess what I want to talk about is like I saw an interesting split, whereas like Jaylen Warren last year only had 39% of the opportunity share. And then when you look at what Arthur Smith does, it's closer to 50-40. So I love Jaylen Warren at cost, but where I think people are wrong is that there's this notion that Najee Harris sucks. And I'm not trying to explain away Najee Harris, but he had a foot injury for 2 years, and all of the Steelers have sucked since Najee's been there. They've had a bottom offensive line play, bottom QB play, and they have been relevant solely on the grace of Mike Tomlin's patience and I guess angels in red zone or whatever. They got Christopher Lloyd helping them out. Shout out to Angels in the outfield. Do you like Najee Harris? He's getting a little old, but I like him as a player, so I'll hold him. Would you buy him? Do you think it's breakout season for Jaylen Warren? Break down this backfield for us, Jeff.
I'm so happy to do this show with you, and I'm so happy to hear you say that, because there is so much hate for Najee Harris, and everybody is just convinced that Jaylen Warren is Christian McCaffrey, just like in the bad side of a timeshare. And I think that it really reminds me of the Dallas backfield a couple of years ago with Ezekiel Elliott and having Tony Pollard there. And yeah, Tony Pollard was very explosive as a change of pace back. But then when Tony Pollard tried to be the lead back, while he was injured, but also he just couldn't really get it rolling. I think that if one of these two players were to be a running back one, were to be flirting with even a top 5 running back, I think Najee Harris would be that player that has that in his range of outcomes. I think you're exactly right. You talk about the foot injury, you talk about the poor offensive line in Pittsburgh. I mean, there is a chance they've invested in the offensive line. Russell Wilson gives them competent quarterback play. Harris could come back to, it was not that long ago that Harris was a top 10, top 5 even dynasty running back asset, and it could come back and play. And I think that I might be interested in trying to see if I can buy Najee Harris in some places, given all the negativity around him. I like to buy negativity that might be a little bit inflated.
Yeah, and for me, it's Jaylen Warren is on sell watch. I'm very bullish on Jaylen Warren, but like you said, I know what I'm paying for with Jaylen Warren. I'm going to have some spike weeks, but I'm probably going to have some 7-8 point games because he's not going to get those high leverage opportunities in the red zone, because Najee Harris, say whatever you want, he's an objectively better red zone back. And Najee Harris is one where you've seen how I build, Jeff. So like I buy wide receivers like crazy. Like if someone is high on Dontavian Wicks, because I have Dontavian Wicks as like my wide receiver 5 and 6 on teams. I love Wicks. This isn't like anti-Wicks, but if I need a running back, I'll move Wicks for Najee Harris. I'll move like these Jahan Dot, depending, these wide receiver 5s that we hope to be somebody to go get Najee Harris. Corey, we'll finish with you before we get out of here. How do you like this backfield? Are they both kind of biased for you? Are you like a big Jaylen Warren truther?
I mean, the Arthur Smith just conundrum, it's just super fun. Like, I just am embracing the chaos. Like, I like both of them. I mean, look at last year in Atlanta, Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier, like Bijan, 214 carries, 86 targets, and Tyler, he had 186 carries and 23 targets, like kind of like that 50-40 split that you are saying. Like, people, they get so much hype around Bijan and that expectations for the player that elevates that frustration when they see a perceived lack of usage. Like Bijan, he still was RB9 on the season. So I'm not trying to get caught up in like a trendy wave just to hate on a coach for scheming out his players and just finding the best in their skill sets. Like looking at Harris and Warren for Pittsburgh, I am just really excited for this duo, and I think both will provide that fantasy relevance. Just a perfect complement to each other, a nice 1-2 punch for this Arthur Smith perceived led offense.
Yeah. I know, Jeff, you're not the biggest Arthur Smith fan, but like you said, like a lot of like, I think we hate Desmond Ridder more than we hate Arthur Smith, because like Desmond Ridder would have given everyone more high leverage opportunities in the red zone. And would have been frustrating sometimes that Tyler Algier would have been, a vulture. Yes, but it's justified when you're scoring points. So, like, especially when we got Russ there, like, I think every Steeler is kind of a buy. Like, George Pickens, uh, people like George Pickens more than I like George Pickens, so he's not so much a buy. But in a startup draft, he's finally at that price where I'll click the button on him. So with that being said, guys, that's our show. We basically said buy the cheaper guy most of the time if they're both cheap. You get them both, but it's always just fun to break these down. Again, make sure to like, subscribe, congratulate Corey for his first time with me and Jeff. We'll never bring him back. No, I'm just kidding. We're going to have him back a lot, especially in season. And then again, if you guys are finishing here on the video side, we have a couple of about 15 extra minutes on the audio side where we're breaking down our other teams that are a little less ambiguous. And I just wanted to talk about them. Marshawn Lloyd over at Green Bay, the Broncos, and the Chargers. So make sure to head over to your streaming platform and check that out. But in the meantime, we'll see you on the next one. I'm Jagger. Jeff is with me as always. We'll let Corey back sometime. See you next time.